Yeah.
Okay, we figured it out. This is my first live stream. I think it's Tanya's first live stream too.
On YouTube? Yes.
And this was a bit of a struggle to figure all this out, but we finally did it.
Was
And I'm s- I thought it would be way easier than this. So just welcome everybody. I'm gonna also pull up the YouTube just to see if there's any questions or any comments anybody has during this time that we have together. There is a weird delay because we're on Zoom and we're streaming it that way. So, and that was the only way I could figure out how to have a second person on here. If anybody knows of any other way, just let me know. But this is kind of what I figured out. So, welcome everybody. We're going to be talking about menopause today. We're going to be talking about what your doctor won't tell you about menopause because doctors don't work with you on your metabolism. They just work with you on helping you mitigate symptoms. And Tanya and I were talking. She's my good friend, Tanya Saunders, and she's a wonderful breath worker. She also works in the medical industry, and I'll give you a chance to share a little bit about yourself too, Tanya, in a second. But before we get started, we were talking, and we're both going through menopause, and we were talking about how our moms didn't really tell us much about menopause. The medical industry didn't really tell us much about menopause. Like, there's really not that much. There's information, but it's more geared towards hormonal replacement therapy. And I don't have any problems with people doing hormonal replacement therapy. I think if that's, and I talked to some clients about that, if that's what feels right for you, you should definitely do it. I come from the perspective of doing things naturally until you've pretty much done everything you possibly can do, and you've pretty much gotten to your limit there, and you feel like, okay, I need something else. So what we're going to talk about today really mostly is how you can naturally regulate your metabolism, and we're going to talk about also the changes that you've gone through, if you're either your perimenopause or menopause, what's going on in the body hormonally. And that's going to give you a better idea of why your body's doing what it's doing. So, like, if you're getting hot flashes, if you're having a hard time sleeping, if you are all of a sudden you notice you got more of a belly than you used to, or your chest is bigger, those things. Those are all things I notice about myself too. And I've been a fitness professional for almost 20 years. And a lot of it really surprised me because I'm pretty good about eating. But what I'm going to share today, and of course, exercising, but what I'm going to share today is we're going to go deeper into this because it's really a shift in your mindset, in your general perspective. It's a little bit of a shift in the direction you're going because you just don't have those sex hormones producing anymore, and so that really decreases your ability to be anabolic, so muscle building, right? Anything that supports the metabolism. So we're going to talk about why that is and what you can do to mitigate both symptoms and actually build muscle during this time, which is really exciting. And then also, I'm going to share some common mistakes people make. Some I see my clients making when they go through this transition. And then Tanya's also we're gonna have this conversation together, and she's gonna share her personal experiences too with menopause. So you guys are really in for a treat today. I really am excited. So Tanya, I'll hand the mic over to you if you want to share anything about yourself before we get started.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thanks, Allison, for having me on your platform. I'm really excited to have this conversation. And just a caveat, and I'm just going to say, I actually did start progesterone and a hormone
Yeah.
estradiol patch a week ago. So it'll be interesting to have this conversation. Of course, I'm early on this, and the reason you and I wanted to chat about this is because we want to discover along with everybody else how to be able to support in this conversation to learn, right? And as
Yeah.
we are in these lived experiences. So that's what I wanted to say because I was like, wait, hold on, I am taking progesterone now.
Oh,
And
that's okay. Yeah. I
we can chat
will add
about,
to that. What's
yeah,
that?
and we can chat about like
Yeah.
perhaps like why or why not that route. But so I'm Tanya. I'm here in the DC area, and I met Allison a few years ago through a coach that we have shared for several years. And I'm a practicing nurse anesthetist, so I do have that science background, and I am a wellness coach, breathwork facilitator, and I interested in having these conversations with you because, again, it's a way for me to learn and for us to share what we are so passionate about, so that again we can live these, like, it's another third of our life, right?
Yeah,
So I'm
right.
51, the average age of menopause, meaning post-menopause, the 1 year mark of your last period, but I'm not there yet. But really interested in how we can learn from each other so we can stay empowered, yeah,
Yeah.
and to build the strength and the power that is really necessary during this time of our life.
Absolutely. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And I really appreciate you being, sharing. And I want to make it clear, I don't have any problem with anybody that does the hormonal replacement therapy. I think it, you can still get the benefits from what we're talking about today and be on hormonal replacement therapy.
Totally.
Yeah. So but from my perspective, I took the route of natural and not using hormonal replacement therapy, although I do use a little bit of progesterone sometimes, but it's only when I need it. But for some people, for some women, progesterone does not work. They have like a different kind of response to it. So you just have to figure out what's right for you, right? And so this is what we're going to get into today, is to start to learn how to take some of that autonomy back to your own body and start learning about how it works, and not only learning about how it works, but then learning maybe what the right steps are for you for getting through this phase of life, and it can be really uncomfortable. I've had hot flashes myself. I went through last summer, lots of hot flashes, and having trouble sleeping and all of these things. And so I'm going to share a lot of today about what I did to get my body back into balance. And a lot of it's just really going back to basics, things we really already know, but we're not doing so much in our life, or we don't put enough value on. And we'll be talking more about that today as well. So yeah. I'm just going to check in with this. So if anybody has, it may be a delay, but if anybody has any questions or any comments, just feel free to pop it in the chat, and I'll keep looking to see what comes up. But I really appreciate you guys being here. This is so much fun. I've never, like I said, I've never done this before, so this is a new thing for me. So, okay, let's get right into it. So menopause, it isn't something, I was talking to a client the other day about this, and she's going through like a kind of uh, a second phase of menopause. She thought she was done, and then she started her cycle again, and she was like, so, now she's having all these symptoms. And she was just like, I am so angry at my body right now, and it just feels like sometimes our body is against us when we're going through something like this. And it's just really a major shift. And what happens is, in menopause, we go through a hormonal shift, which is from estradiol to estrone. And which I find not many people talk about this, but I think it's interesting to know, because we produce the estradiol, which is when we start our period until we finish it, in the ovaries, and that's one of our sex hormones. And we also produce progesterone to flush out the excess estrogen after you've had a period, so that you can get ready for progestation, for pregnancy. So we stop producing those as much, and then what gets replaced is the estrone, and then your ovaries stop producing sex hormones, and then you switch over to the adrenals and the adipose tissue, which are fat cells. Now that is what is producing the estrone, your hormones. So this is why we become insulin sensitive during this time, also carb sensitive. So you're eating the same things you were before, and then all of a sudden you're gaining all this weight, is because your body is more sensitive to that now, because you're producing that in a different part of the body. And so that's a big switch. So that's why we also have to like look at our stress, our stress levels. And so, as well as like how you've lived your life, we have patterns, right? We have patterns of thinking, we have patterns of emoting or suppressing, we have patterns of eating, of working out, that have really kind of worked for us throughout the years. And then we hit this phase and those things aren't working anymore. And the reason is maybe we were able to handle more stress during that time because we were a little bit more anabolic, which is more like meaning more muscle building, pro metabolism, like you're able to handle more stress in your body. But then we become more catabolic as we go through this shift because we're just way more sensitive to stress. So any stressful patterns you were doing before, any stress that you had been putting on your body over the years will start to come out during this time. You're gonna start feeling it as either affecting your weight. It's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect how you feel about yourself, your moods, about your physical physiology and those kinds of things. So we want to make sure that the frequency, just remember the frequency and the intensity of your stress is really what's going to dictate your health. It's going to dictate how your metabolism functions. So if we can start to lift some of that stress off, and that can be in the form of different things, which we're going to talk about today as well, then you really can, I feel like you can make a huge difference. And one of the things that I did that I thought was really important was I started to focus more on my own self-care. I did that anyway, but like really even more so, and just got more present with it as I got into this process, because there's just some things that I didn't feel like I could do during that time. I couldn't, I needed to take a break from social media. I needed to take a break from all these external stressors for a little while so I could get back to what I felt like was my center of balance. And so we can look at that in our own lives as well, from that perspective, to see what is going on. I'd love for you to share, Tanya, what your experience was when you started going through this. Did you get like a bunch of symptoms, or have you been pretty good? Has it been pretty even for you?
Would never say it's even. That would be linear, which we so are not, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, like during this, like I still consider myself in that perimenopausal state right now. And so like the first things I did notice was, the obvious, right? The unpredictability of my period. And so, and then just obviously knowing like my age, right? So it's like when we know at 12 or 14, you know you're going to have your period. You don't think it's like weird or odd. So at this age, like I was almost expecting it, right? So I'm noticing, and I'm noticing it. But I have to say I'm similar to you, like, for the past several years, I have been working on my self-care, really understanding that even when I had menopause on my radar, just knowing just so important it is to have a self-care practice in check, in place, to help support us through this, right? And so, yeah, that what you were saying about, I mean, from what I've been learning about in this experience and noticing, is that the number one thing that we can do is learn how to control our stress, right? And so, because we get that cortisol peak. And so breath work has been as what I would say is my door in to understanding what self-care is. And what does that mean, understanding? That means just really noticing when I feel stress in my body. Because I just think for so many of us humans, we just walk around in what they consider the natural state of go, 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 like that sympathetic fight, flight kind of way of living and being. And it is just normal in this modern time. And so what breathwork has allowed me to do was learn what a sense of, I would just say calm. I don't want to say spaciousness because that's so people can't relate to that, but it's a felt way of really tapping in to that part of our nervous system, that parasympathetic nervous system, that vagus part of our nervous system. It allows us to feel calmer, and more responsive to our daily circumstances, what I'll say. So we don't have to we have to react. So that for sure has been super important in noticing what I've noticed with these changes, and that is, I mean, I don't know. I guess, it's one of these things like, okay, so I noticed that I was having the period changes. I was noticing I was having some, breast sensitivity. I was noticing I was having a little bit more irritation,
Yeah.
and I would say for me, most of all, I would notice the architecture of my sleep was changing.
Yeah. I noticed that too.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and that to me, and I would notice that. So when I'd wake up in the mornings, and I'm like you, like I've always been a devoted advocate for moving my body. And so I just didn't feel like moving my body as I wanted to. And what has why I'm so interested in having these conversations is because I think it's so easy for us to say, okay, we're just aging. It's okay to
Right.
to not feel like you have to go. Just give yourself a break. You know what I mean? Be
Yeah.
compassionate. Yeah, be compassionate with yourself. And also know we do have within that capacity to actually get stronger, to get more
Yes.
powerful,
That's what I
right?
realized too. It's so exciting, is it?
And
Yeah.
that's what I think is so cool, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, what's the impetus for having these conversations? Yes, it's very, very possible to get powerful, to get stronger as we age.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I realized that too. And that's what was so exciting to me about it was that this is like a next level. Now you're able to get strong in a different way than you were before, right? And it's really exciting. And I love how you brought up the breath work and the nervous system, because that's super important, because we are in a way we're resetting the nervous system, because the hormonal change is going to upset the nervous system a little bit, because when you feel unsafe in the body, you're like, what are these changes? I don't know what's happening. That's a feeling of being unsafe in your body. And then, that creates havoc on the nervous system, and it kind of gets you more in that fight or flight, feeling. But yes, I agree with you. Breath work has been such a game changer for me as well, in helping me get into the body, relax the body more, feel the body. I think that's important, because oftentimes we just want to fix what's wrong, or we want it to go away, but we haven't really deeply felt it. We haven't really deeply sat with it. And so a lot of times when you can do that, and I know it's not easy, because sometimes some of these symptoms are very uncomfortable, right? But when you do that, when you make space for yourself every day to be a little bit more still, um, in the mind and in the body, then what you can do is you can sit with it, and the answers will come. Your body will give you cues for you to move forward with how to take care of it and how to support it. So, um, and again, that's probably, it's really hard to do that sometimes when you're in the middle of it, but it's a really great opportunity to do that, because many of us by this age our kids are old enough to take care of themselves in a lot of ways. We're also transitioning to a different phase of our life. Um, so it's kind of it's a time where you get to devote a lot to yourself, right? You kind of bring that all back into yourself, which is what I really love about it. And so even just framing exercise differently, it's just so different now, because now it's not it's not like goal oriented as much as I used to do. Like I needed to get in this kind of shape, and it didn't feel like it was fully for me. It was kind of like, because I felt like I needed to do it. Um, it was just it's hard to explain, but it's a different kind of motivation, right? Whereas now I'm doing it for me, and I'm doing it for the joy and the feeling that it brings me. The working out, it just feels so good. My body feels great when I do it, and it loves it. And that's one of the things that has really helped me a lot is building muscle and being able to do that at the age of 51. I'll be 52 soon. But when I hit 50, everything changed. It was like I was just kind of the same. I never really went through perimenopause or anything. And then all of a sudden I hit 50 and my period stopped, and then I started having symptoms and stuff. So like mainly hot flashes, and the sleep got disturbed, which I'd never had before. I always slept like a rock. But I was waking up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I was waking up like very adrenalized, like early in the morning, which I would usually sleep till like 7 or 8. And now I'm waking up at like 5, and like it's the same time my husband wakes up. So I was like, wow, this is crazy. But I was just like, okay, well, let's just, see where this takes me. I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna support my body in the meantime the best way I can. And just let's just see what happens. So but for me personally, I needed to really clear the clutter of the mind. I really needed to clear my mind chatter, because that's what I think was stressing me out the most. Is I was letting too much in there instead of just having a little bit of space and quietness during the day for myself, where I didn't have to think about a lot of stuff. So that was really helpful. um but before we get off on the mind thing, because that's a whole nother topic, as it relates to menopause, because I was just talking to my client, like it can make your mind go like off, like it can become its own entity, and it just goes on and chatters, and you're like, how do I stop this? Um, but that is, there's ways to do it, and we'll share that today too. But yeah, so I just wanted to get into also just things that I see my clients do, and they're coming to me for help. Some mistakes I feel like people make, and then things, real easy things that you can do. I mean, hopefully this works for you. If it doesn't, that's okay, but just try it and see. It's worth a try, right? But the things that I learned and shifts that I made in my own life too were through basically switching off into from more cardio into more strength training, and I've always really enjoyed more strength training and weightlifting myself. But there's a lot of women that I know that like to go to classes. They like to go to exercise classes, and or like just do a run or do some kind of a cardio machine workout, which is great, because you do want to get more circulation during this time. That's really helpful for the body. But the other thing is that we want to balance that out. You don't want to, again, we don't want to stress our bodies out too much to where we're fatiguing ourselves, right? And we're using too much energy, more than we can replenish, because we're using a lot of nutrients during this time too. So that's important to remember. But the classes, I don't have a problem with fitness classes, other than they try to throw a bunch of stuff at you at once, and it's intended for a group of people. So if you're really needing something more individual, if you need something that's more intentional, specifically for your body, if you're in a certain phase of life, then I would, especially this phase, I would recommend just going into the gym and lifting weights, because rather than going and getting into a class, because that is first of all, you're kind of doing so many things at once. It cancels out the muscle building, because the anabolic effect, because you're just making yourself tired, right? And doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's getting the heart rate up and all that, but it's probably over adrenalizing you in the meantime. So that would, again, if you're producing the estrogen in the adrenals, then you can see how that would be producing, and the fat cells that would produce more fat over time. That's why when we work out really hard, but we still gain weight, that's why, right? Because we're, number one, not really doing the right exercise at the right time for our body, and number two, we're overstressing, we're overtaxing the body, right? um And so what I tell my clients is just start very simple. Make it as simple as you possibly can. It doesn't have to be like this crazy workout with all these cool functional exercises and all that. Just get on, just like start building muscle. Learn how to squat, learn how to deadlift, learn how to do a push up, learn how to do a row. And then if you want to supplement, get on some machines. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not big on machines so much, but sometimes I'll get on there just to do a little extra muscle building, because what we're doing is we're getting into a body, a little bit more of a bodybuilding mindset, right? We don't want to be like the bodybuilders so much and just, do all the unhealthy things they do, but just think about now what you want to do is you want to build muscle, because this is what's not only going to bring longevity into your body, it's going to help you move better. It's going to help you recover better. It's going to help your bones. It's going to actually help your insulin resistance too. That really improves insulin resistance when you build muscle. And it's going to also, you're going to look much better. You're going to feel much better. You're going to have more energy. So that's one of the easiest things I feel like. I know it's hard, but it's also easy, right? For women to start to do is just really get more intentional with your workouts. Like, what are you there to do? What's your purpose? What do you need? What does your body need right now? Right. And so during menopause, it really just needs more of the anabolic or the muscle building support. So I would focus on that as opposed to a lot of classes or heavy cardio, high endurance. You can do cardio, but make it a shorter bout of cardio, and watch your heart rate and make sure it doesn't go over a certain you want to stay, probably, I think stay within like 130, the 130s, which is pretty good. You can go a little, you just want to make sure it doesn't go too high to where you're actually getting into your adrenaline reserves and that kind of thing. So that is what I'll say about, I think that's all I wanted to say about the strength training aspect. Yeah. So again, you don't have any support from your sex hormones. So that's how you lose the anabolic abilities, but you can get them back by just building muscle. So that's the good news, right? And we can feel really strong. So I've also seen like women who are above 50, like with a lot of muscle, because you can do that, right? It's possible. What has your experience been, Tanya, on that?
It's, Allison, my experience with lifting weights has been the socioculture of like how I was the time that I was, brought up, which was like the Jane Fonda era
Yeah, I was too.
with the pink dumbbells. And I will
Yeah.
say, and then it transitioned later to the Tracy Anderson, where
Hmm.
it was you never want to lift 3 pounds because the desired look was the skinny ballet arms. And
Right.
and again, as I've been down this rabbit hole of learning what serves me in this period now, where we are set up for bone density loss, where we are set up for, what we'll say, and it's very true, as I do work in the hospital, fractures. We do
Oh, yeah.
a lot of older women. It's a fact what happens, but it doesn't have to be our story again. So what are these things that we can do? And so yeah, as I was just for the past few months have been looking into building weight. So I went and I bought 8 pounds, 10 pounds, and 15 pounds. My husband has them downstairs, but I just wanted a different setup than his. And I remember his response, which was interesting. And he was like, "You don't need anything heavier than 8." And I was like, are you for real? Which perpetuates
Mm.
that
Yeah.
kind of mentality, that kind of mindset. And I said, Ken, I said, look, I said, there's this woman that I follow, Stacy Sims, and she has this saying that, women are not small men.
Right.
We are very different.
Yeah.
And do our due diligence to study, because again, we are going to be talking about the mind today, but all this does impact our cognition. It all impacts
Absolutely.
our brain growth, right?
Yeah.
Because we are neuroplastic. So not only neuroplastic, like you said, we can still build muscle, right? And so
Yeah.
learning how. So having said that, I've slowly been starting to use weights and taking the creatine to help me
Oh
with that
yeah.
recovery and the building of it. So I'm up to 15 pounds. I will say that, and what I've noticed is that my fears of getting big, my fears of like water retention. Yes, it's only been a few months, but it's just so surprising how quickly we can get strong because
Yes.
estrogen is responsible, right,
Yeah.
for our neuromuscular junctions, how fast it can contract, how strong it can contract, all of that. And so this is one of the ways, taking it back to the beginning and how you said we don't need to have the hormone replacement because you can use these exercise to start to stimulate our central
Yeah.
nervous system to say, hey, we don't need estrogen.
Right.
We can use these stimuluses like lifting weights to be able to say that we can take in carbohydrates and glucose into the muscle and use that first within the muscle, as opposed to what females typically do, and that is, the we don't use it takes away lean fat.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it doesn't
Exactly.
take away the visceral fat, which we think it would, but it takes away the lean fat. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I just find that
Exactly.
so interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I've been down the path, been down like I'm really like, let's go dumbbells. I mean, let's go. Like I want to learn how to deadlift. I'm like, deadlift, what's that mean? And
Yeah.
yeah, I've had that mindset of like women don't go to the gym to deadlift. They go for the treadmills. I've never been a
Right.
class person either,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so that is something that I think that is a huge message. If nobody leaves, whatever they take away from this is it is a must. It is a must to
Yeah.
start lifting.
I agree. And oh, that
So
was great. I love what you shared. And I love that you're starting that, Tanya. That's amazing. And the deadlift is really just a bend. The squat is just a squat. It's like these are all
yeah.
movement patterns that we do already during the day. It's just learning how to do it with some weight. And you can start, you don't have to start with a barbell. You can start with some, a kettlebell or something like that. And on my channel I have a video about the difference between the deadlift and the squat and how you can get started with that as well. So I teach my clients, and there's men who don't know the difference too. And this is how people hurt their backs, but that's a different topic. But yeah, it's just really, it's like, hey, let's open ourselves up to learning something new about what our body can do, right? Because that's exciting. And maybe we have never even entertain that in our life, that our body could do something like that or do something different. It's really cool, and then you get to play with it and you get to experience it, and then you get to experience your body a different way. And this is what brings the joy into the menopause process, because then this opens you up to something different. Like, oh wow, okay, I can take care of my body differently now. It's time to learn something different. So other than the other reason I just love it, I love weightlifting, is it grounds you. It really grounds your energy. If we're talking about the energetic aspect of this, and the muscle contains the mitochondria that have, those are your energy powerhouses, right? And if you stimulate that, you're going to have also more like natural energy. You're going to feel more grounded. You're going to feel more calm in your mind as well. And it's just going to just help you with your nervous system, and getting through the day that way, and your breathing and all of these things. It just translates into so much. So now we're not using weightlifting just to have a certain body, or we're not, doing our workouts just to look a certain way. Now we're actually doing it for both ourselves, but there's so many other reasons. We're actually on a journey to experience our body differently. And I just think it's important to leave it open like that, so that you're not getting stuck in the dogma, the fitness dogma of what we're supposed to be doing or what we're supposed to be looking like or whatever it is. Like, build your muscle and enjoy it, and I know there, what you said, there women have a fear of getting big, but it's really hard for women to get big. Honestly, I mean, women have to work really hard at that. And some of them have to take steroids for that. So if you're not doing any of those things, I don't think you need to worry about getting big from weightlifting. You'll just get nice and toned. Your body will start to, feel, not only feel better, but it'll, you'll start fitting in your clothes better. You'll start feeling your shape. You don't have to work on spot working on your belly. It'll naturally, get flat from the weightlifting, because it's the muscle is what keeps the metabolism going. So think about that as your powerhouse. That's what keeps your metabolism healthy. And so, and not only that, I mean, just, we have aches and pains sometimes, and sometimes just getting stronger can make those aches and pains in the joints go away, because now your joints are strong, right? There's strength around that. So there's so many benefits, right, to weightlifting. And I love to talk about it, because I mean, I've been doing it for years, but I still find new things about it all the time that I love. So, what I'm going to talk about another mistake that I see women make about when they hit menopause is they continue to eat the same way they were before, right? So a lot of times, for whatever reason, I don't know what is going on, but I feel like I hear a lot of women saying that they aren't eating a lot of protein. They're not eating a lot of animal protein. And then, sometimes under 40 grams a day. And because when we go through menopause, we actually synthesize protein. It's harder for us to synthesize and digest protein. You actually have to up your protein. Again, also think about the muscle building aspect, right? To support that. And so because we're also going through nutrients really fast, so we have to, the protein is it builds your structure. It helps build the structure in your body. So it's going to make your connective tissue much stronger, more flexible. It's going to give you the ability to build the muscle. It's going to help ground you as well. And that's one thing I was doing. I was having smoothies in the morning, because I wouldn't have like a big appetite. And then I would make a big breakfast. Smoothies were not working for me anymore. So I'd put fruit and I'd put milk in there, and like some collagen. And it just got to be to the point, because my metabolism is a way that I need a lot more food in the morning, but I didn't have an appetite at first. And so when I hit menopause, that was like lighting a match and blowing it out for my energy. I was just it was nothing. And then I was also starting to gain weight. And I said, okay, this is not working for me anymore. I need to switch it up and have a more grounding breakfast. And so now I have a lot more animal protein in the morning with some slower burning carbs. Sometimes I do some gluten-free toast or something like that. And what it does is it sustains me for the rest of until my next meal. And that's what you want. You want to be sustained for the next 3 to 5 hours before your next meal. And if you eat a meal and about 30 minutes to an hour later, you feel hungry, you probably didn't get the right combination for that. And most likely you didn't get enough protein. And so the recommendation for women as they go through menopause is to up the protein from I think the range is like 90 to 130 grams of protein a day, which seems like a lot. But if you are doing a very low amount of protein, then just go up a little bit more and see how that makes you feel, and then if that feels good, then add a little bit more. So just see where you're at on that spectrum. Because really, this is what will help your hormonal balance so much is the protein. And it needs to be, quality source, clean, organic, if possible. Animal protein is my suggestion there. So what are your thoughts on that, Tanya?
I love that you brought this up, because this was something that I struggled with, and I still continue to struggle with, because I feel like when I have something in the morning, it kind of spirals me into wanting to eat more. So I wouldn't. But what I've just quickly discovered and learned, just like you said, you're eating the wrong thing. But also, what we're trying to do here, the real important part of it is go back to the beginning of the conversation about cortisol, and cortisol spikes within
Right.
like the first 30 minutes of when we wake up. So when we are, especially if we are going to work out within, the first thing in the morning, we don't want to be in those low energy states because that's just going to exacerbate that cortisol, which is what we don't want. So just like what you said, so just a little bit of protein, a little bit of carb, just depending on your workouts. I mean, typically for me, just because I'm like you, like I really don't like to eat a lot in the morning, so I'll put some collagen or protein powder, a whey protein that has the leucine in it, and then I'll do a oat milk, so that has
Okay.
it has a
Yeah.
little bit of the carb, and that is enough to sustain my workout. Now, if I do anything longer, like endurance, then I'll do something a little bit more substantial, but just for a very, routine morning that feels like I am sustaining my energy level. It's that. It's just what you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And I would also say like fasting, this is not the time to fast. You know, I know that's a big thing right now, intermittent fasting, but it's really not the time because again, the more stress that you put on yourself, the more it's gonna kind of push back. So um I'm not going to talk too much about fasting. I know there are good regenerative qualities to fasting, but right now you need to be building your body up. You need to be doing, building it up with nutrient dense foods, good quality nutrients. There's one adjustment I did make. I just love fat, right? I mean, I love saturated fat. I'm a big, Weston A. Price. I've been, you know, years ago, got on to Weston A. Price, and I love their approach and all of that. And I really do integrate that into my diet as well. So, but I've had to recently, when I switched over, I noticed that, and I already knew I was eating too much fat because if you can go over too much into fat, you're gonna end up gaining fat, right? Like that's how. I mean, it's good to have good fat, and you want fat soluble vitamin, fats for fat soluble vitamins so that you can digest those. It's very important, but you don't want to go overboard on it either. So another thing I'll share here is that I did lower the fat in my diet in some areas. So lower fat, Greek yogurt or low fat cottage cheese or something like that instead of getting the full fat, which is decadent and it's delicious. But again, like it's too much fat. So look at your macronutrients, right? I use a tool called Chronometer. And, it's hard to get my clients sometimes to do this, but and because I know everybody has an emotional charge about like tracking their calories. And then we feel like we're really linear and we're not like enjoying the process. But what I love about it is doing it every so often just to check in to see what you're doing, because it's often really hard to know what you're doing unless you're just checking in to do a little tracking every once in a while. And you're like, okay, this is where I'm at. I'm going to do this for a couple of weeks and get into this new pattern. And then, I don't need it anymore. So use that tool as needed to kind of redirect your new intention and where you want to be, or try to play around with different macronutrients to see what's best and how your body responds that way. Um, but I really think it's a great tool for really seeing what you're doing, because it's really impossible. You can get to the end of the day and you're like, oh yeah, I did great. I ate all the right things. I didn't go over in how much I was eating and all these things. And then you'll look at like you'll track it like the next day, or you'll look at what you tracked and you're like, whoa, that's way more than I thought it was. So sometimes we are overeating too, right? Sometimes we're overeating in a certain macronutrient, or we're overeating in general. So either, some people just undereat or skip meals and then eat all their calories in one meal. And then other people will just overeat all the meals. And so we just want to see where the balance is there, right? Like we just want balance in how we're eating, our eating pattern. And of course, these eating patterns are a result of what we did in our childhood. Yeah, how we ate, our emotional, there's an emotional component to eating, right? We all know this. So take those things into account, but also just use it as a practical tool to just see what you're doing without any judgment, just try to use it as a tool and not judge or criticize yourself for, doing something what you deem as wrong or the wrong way. Just go into it with like, I'm just going to see what I'm doing and then I'll tweak it, right? And so if you can go into it with a mindset like that, I think it's much healthier, and then you're going to get more clear on what you need when you can do that too.
Allison, can I add to that? I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
yeah. And so, as I started this journey into just diving deep into how to feel empowered during this stage, this perimenopause, menopause stage, is that one of the first things I did invest in. Yes, I did the chronometer, but I also invested in a DEXA scan, so I can have a baseline. So from every 6 months or so, I can really get a real feedback and how am I doing? Yeah.
That's great. I love
Yeah.
that.
And you get to see, and you really get to see your bone density too. So it's really, I would just recommend that looking into that.
Yeah, because I mean yeah, we don't want to get fixated on the analytics, right? But it's a good marker. It's just good to know, okay, what's actually happening here, because sometimes we don't always have the connection with our body in the very beginning to know what we're doing or what's happening. And so we have to check in sometimes with some of these tools to be able to do that. I think that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tanya. That's awesome. Um, and yeah, so those are the main mistakes that I feel, those the first two. And then, the other thing I will mention too, because I mean, we've been going for almost an hour here, so I'm not going to get so deep into this, but um, you know, I think we touched upon this already, is that sometimes women, we just maybe we get busier, or we keep our busy schedule, right? As we go into this time, instead of really opening up space for ourselves during the day to process our life, right? To process what's happening in the body, or just giving yourself a little bit of downtime or even play during the day to do that, to really enjoy your life, or to reflect on what you feel like is happiness for you, or what brings you joy, and those kinds of things. And so it's the slowing down. Sometimes slowing down scares people, but really it's being still, right? And you know a lot about that with as a breath worker, helping people through that, right?
Yeah, yeah. I love play. I absolutely, I think play is really critical, to whatever it looks like for anybody, but just to dial in on that. And so just to carve out a little piece of your day, because that, again, it helps support the cognitive stability, the growth, the brain-derived neural factors, So play is just so important, especially again as we age and we are in that go, go, go. So sometimes pausing, breath work to speed up is profound.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, pause, and it's called pause breath work for a reason, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're taking, and menopause, right? Menopause,
Yeah,
pause.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's so funny. This, for some reason, this is coming to me right now, but the shame around menopause and talking about it, right? And it's just so interesting to me. I was talking to one of my clients earlier this week, and especially like in a corporate environment, it seems like it's a very vulnerable to say, oh, or to be in a hot flash in a meeting. It's like people, she just felt like people weren't very accepting of that, right? It seems like there's a lot of shame still wrapped around that. And it's just a hormonal shift. It's not necessarily a weakness, right? I mean, we are a little more vulnerable because we're going through a major change in the body, but I think just because it's not talked about a lot, and other women, are not. I think it actually, there more and more women are sharing their experiences, but I don't think it was as much, like we didn't get that much from our mothers about their menopause experience, right? And so there's sometimes shame involved because we are letting go of what we considered our youth, right? And our baby making days and all of those things. And now we're moving into a different phase, which I really loved because, it feels like so creative and a different kind of freedom. Than I had experienced most of my life.
No, I agree with that. And I think that there is a movement right now to have this awareness to it, just like us having these conversations, because we can release like this, the shame, the stigma, when you can just learn about it and get curious about it. Because again, it's like, when we turn 50, 51, it's like longevity, like for women,
Yeah.
we're in the 80s. I look to my parents, my dad's, mid 80s, my mom's late 70s. So it's like we have a long time still that we can really look to how to live that again. So we're saying with strength, with power, with clarity. And we can
Yeah.
do that by learning and putting into practice,
Yeah.
what has been shown in what people are experimenting with, to not
Yeah.
have to not suffer. I'll just say that, to not
Yeah.
suffer and to fall victim to like, oh, you're just getting older. We're just getting old.
Yeah. Isn't that a story that we've been
Yeah.
told many times? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so interesting. And I've heard so many clients say that too. I'm just getting older, so this hurts now. And I've got, it's like we haven't been given the framework to see the opportunity there or what we could work on like with that, right? And I love that. I love I'm a big fan of the Knees Over Toes program. Patrick, uh, I can't remember his last name now, but
Mhm.
he does this program called Knees Over Toes. He started actually. He was a protege of Charles Poliquin, who was a bodybuilder, but he also was he had these classes where he taught people about exercise too, and he was well known. He was in Canada. And so Patrick was a student of his, and he took what he learned from Charles and made it into a longevity program basically for knees, right? So many
Wow.
people complain about knees as they get older. And he was like, let's take it to the max and let's see how far our knees can go, even if we have injured our knee in the past. Can we heal those knees? Can we bend them even more as we get older? Can we have more mobility and more strength in the knees as we get older? And so his work is really something that anybody can do at any time in their life. And then there's so much potential within that, right? So he teaches people how to bend really deeply in their knees and have the strength to push back up, right? With various exercises. So that's the whole premise, the knees over toes. But that's a great example of the longevity factor. It's like just because you don't have to we don't have to fall into that the story of like as we get old we're not going to be able to move well anymore, and all of that. You can keep that as you get older, right? And this is the time, like I've noticed that this is the shift for many women. Like if you're going to make that a practice, if you're going to make moving your body and really taking care of your body a practice, this is when the shift really happens on a different level to set the stage for the rest of your life, right? The second half. So I feel like anything with that really supports the joints, flexibility, mobility, but also that you can work on mobility and strength at the same time, which is why I use his stuff and I teach my clients that too. But in addition to the weightlifting, but he does have weightlifting. I mean, his premise is weightlifting too, but it's just a different approach. Um, so there's always like different avenues and ways you can go about it. It doesn't have to be traditional, but
Allison,
it's
can I add to
whatever.
that?
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
I add?
yeah.
Because that there's so much truth into that, because one of the symptoms as you're getting into perimenopause, menopause is frozen shoulder.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I was complaining about that, and to, my general practitioner, was, so my husband again is like, you should get a steroid shot. And then my general practitioner was like, why don't you consider not using it? And I wasn't doing weight lifts then. And I'll share with you is that I worked on strength. I started
Wow.
lifting and I would just do like those little exercises and it's gone. It's
That's
gone.
amazing.
It's
See,
gone.
that's a great example. That is a great example.
Yeah.
And the strength is what's going to give you the stability.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so a lot of the pain that we experience in our joints is because we lack the stability, and just simply helping it with the strength is going to give it what it needs. And I've seen that a lot in my clients too, Tanya. It really makes a huge difference, and it surprises people because they're like, wow, like this didn't occur to me. I'm like,
Didn't occur to
yeah,
me to
this,
use it, and
yeah,
obviously we're
exactly.
saying, if it's a rotator cuff,
Well,
anything
of
like that,
course,
obviously check,
obviously,
but yeah,
use your judgment. Like if you got to rest it, you got to rest it to heal,
yeah.
but then you get it moving, as soon as you can. But yeah, yeah, that's yeah. So let's before we close up, we're gonna talk about, let's get into the mental. This would be the last topic of the day, the mental, the emotional aspects here. And I'm gonna let Tanya start that one off.
Oh, okay. Um, give me a prompt though, for how you want me to start this. Anything
Well, let's
that's
see.
coming
Well,
through.
like okay, so I find the biggest challenge, and I experienced this too, more last summer than anything, like when I was really feeling that hormonal shift, was kind of the restless mind, the mind chatter, the mind that just wouldn't turn off, that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. So, again, my breath work has been super supportive. We know the science with meditation, but so for so many people, as you were saying earlier, is the mind just wants to go, go, go. And that's just how our minds are built. Like we are wired to keep thinking. And typically that thinking is something that we're suffering from. What problem, what person, what place, right?
Right.
And so breathwork for sure is something that starts to we override that kind of thinking that drops us into our body. So just practice that you can do, or just a count of 3 on the inhale through the nose, longer exhale, 3, 4. Start to elongate it till you get a longer exhale. Box breath, which is a count of 4, inhale through the nose, a pause on the top of the inhale at 4, an exhale at 4, and then a pause on the exhale at 4, and start that cycle again. So breath work supports that mind to then want to go into the body, so that here's what's really important is you start to, like, what's surfacing for you right now in your body, which is we're talking about the mental emotion, our emotions, because our body has just, is always messaging us our emotions, right? And
Yeah.
often that feels uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable. But with that breath work, what that allows you to do is tap into that part of your nervous system where it's just more calm. So that way there's a little bit of what I said earlier. It's hard to describe, but just a little bit of spaciousness. So we don't start to identify with those emotions, because again, those emotions are uncomfortable. But why we want to not identify, but why we want to name those emotions is that the emotion starts to lose charge. And that's the most important part, is because we don't want to resist the emotions. That's what causes the disconnect. That's what causes the suffering, right? Because
Yeah.
within that spaciousness, when we can be within, in a calmer state, be in our body, start to like be within our emotion, I promise you, it just starts to lose its states, that you can start to create what I like to say, a sense of meaning. What's the meaning in this for me? I'll give you an example. So in this stage of my life, I have a son who just turned 19 today, and
Oh, wow.
I dropped him off for college on Friday, and he decided to take the route of he's at Virginia Tech, and he's doing the corporate cadets, and it's a 9 day of dropping him off for boot camp. And it was really uncomfortable for me. I am not a helicopter mom. He's been very independent, but for some reason, I almost like regressed back into like wanting to, is he gonna have his milk? Kind of thing. Can I
Yeah.
make his bed? Can I make his bed? Just like really into worrisome. And it was really uncomfortable for me. And, I was with my family, I was with my husband, and he, we it was 4 hours away, Virginia Tech. We came home and he was like, do you want to golf? Do you want to just go on to the next thing? Not that he wasn't sad, but it's like this moving thing. And
Yeah.
I was depressed. I was sad, right? And
Yeah.
it was like just noticing where my body was at, noticing again like these emotions, and really, yeah, just kind of naming it and sitting
Yeah.
with it, and 24, 36, 48 hours, whatever it was, it really did just start to lose its charge that health comes from really tapping into that nervous system, really being with, what is going on with my mind? How can I settle my mind so that, I can understand what's the crosstalk with, the headquarters here to the rest of my body and to everything around me, so that it becomes just a very, I'd like to say, an empowered way of being with a mind, an empowered way to be with the emotions, and to
Yeah.
start to, because you want the connection with the mind, the emotions, the body, that I think is critical for health, for
Yeah.
well-being,
Right.
and that supports, again, from what we're talking about, is the cortisol. We need stress,
Yes.
but it's how we interpret the stress. Is it causing us suffering? What is the movement that wants to happen? How do I move forward, in
Yeah.
this, in that moment, in this cycle, in this phase of your life?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And for many people, we are feeling these emotions and then we suppress them because we don't want to feel them because we kind of judge them as being bad. But like, if you're feeling sad, just feel sad in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Just be with it and then let it pass through. And like you're saying, let it dissipate. And then, then you felt it. And
Yeah.
whereas if we're suppressing our feeling, how we're feeling in the moment, it's still there, but it's then it amplifies and it gets distorted and it comes in another form, right? And in some other way to get your attentions because the energy wants to move, emotions want to move. So, um, so yeah, I love what you shared because it's just like, wow, well, that's okay for me to feel like that right now. Of course, and if it's maybe something, a past feeling, it's a past feeling. Just let it be a feeling and let it just be there. And you're with it and you're acknowledging that it's there. And then you're like, okay. And that's going to get you more in touch with your own body, how your own body feels when you need to connect with it during these times too and with your own emotions. And when you're around other people who are having emotions, you're going to be more comfortable because you've resolved and felt your own emotions, right? You've done that for yourself. And so this is a really good time to be able to do that. So I think I love that, Tanya. I love that you shared that. And I think it can be as simple as that. Everybody has different experiences, different stories, but for the most part we share similar emotions, right? And so if we can just allow ourselves to accept that we we can feel that and we don't have to attach a story to it or an identity to it. It's just a feeling, it's just an emotion, right? And it's just an energy moving through. So I think that's really important now because in my experience, you'll have a lot of suppressed stuff come through because we have a whole history of being, when we became a woman and then we're through different phases of our life. We're going to go through those stories, through those feelings, through those emotions again as we move into this next phase of life. So it's important to learn how to be with it and accept it and love it so that you can move to your next phase of life as a whole being, as a whole person, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I love it. Well, oh my God, that was so good. That hour flew by so quick. And
Good.
I want to thank everybody for coming on. I appreciate you guys so much. And especially those that stuck with us the whole time. I really appreciate it if you would just leave a comment below if if you had any questions or if anything came to mind or if you love this video, just let us know. If you have any ideas for what we could talk about next time, you can leave that in the comments too. And give me a big old like on the video. That would be great. Get it out to more people. So I want to say thank you and a big mwah to Tanya. Thanks for being on. It was so much fun.
So much fun. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're so welcome. See you again soon. All right, bye-bye.